Hi, Fashion Dolls. It is Thankful Thursday, April 4th, and welcome to another new episode of Style by Stevie. Our very special guest today has been on the show previously already. This will be his third consecutive appearance here on the show, and I'm super excited to have him back so that we can catch up and talk what he's been up to in this year 24 and more. So I hope you guys all are doing wonderful. Yesterday we had Instagram was down, FB was down, everything was down for some people, and I know I was one of those people that was affected by it, but I'm glad to be back today. So you guys will be getting two shows to close out this week. We had a girl talk scheduled yesterday with our guest Chappelle Nicole, but that has been pushed up to Friday. So I'm super excited to welcome my very special guest, Fashion Dolls. So without further ado, let's welcome Dame Smith to the dollhouse again so that we can catch up. Hey, now's the time. I didn't even see you come in. With this new IG update thing, I have not seen anybody come in, but it feels great to be back, you guys. Today's look was inspired a little bit by Beyonce's Dangerously in Love era, so I wanted to do something as an homage to Queen Bee. So let's get into it. Let's welcome Dame back to the Dollhouse Fashion Dolls. Are y'all ready? All right. Uh-oh.
Hey,
Welcome
yeah,
back.
make sure you can see me.
Yes, I can see you perfectly.
Okay, good.
Welcome. Welcome back to the Dollhouse. So, before we catch up on what you've been up to, how has this year been for you? Because the last show we did coming into the new year, I had your wife on the show, Sheila,
Mm.
and we talked all things beauty. It was great. I had a great time, and she's coming back on the show. So, what have you been up to? Because we're now in April, whole new month. It is spring officially. The flowers are out. So, what have you been up to?
So far this summer, I'm getting prepared for doing a whole bunch of new programs for people that are looking to like lose weight and definitely eat better. And I'm actually starting to get back into school to learn to be a nutritionist or dietitian. I'm not really sure which direction to go yet, but that's the goal this summer to get that done.
All right, all right. And yes, we're going to touch on that as well too, because like as I mentioned, we're now in the spring, summer months, and it's beach season.
Right.
And everybody wants to get the perfect body. We're going to be breaking out the swimsuits, the two pieces, all of these things. So what are some tips that people can adjust to and adhere to for the spring, summer season?
I actually just did a live stream on Facebook this morning, and I have three tips for you guys that you can use. So, the first one is to get yourself a fitness tracker or some way where you can track your steps, your calories, or find a way to track your heart rate so that way you can see what you're doing throughout the day, how active you really are. And then the second thing would be to get something to help you portion out your food. For me, that's a food scale. So I'm able to basically measure out all of my meals and things like that because I cook at home. And then the third thing would be to find some kind of plan that you can stick to. So a lot of people they're trying to lose weight, but they think if it's just eat less food that they can pull it off. But without an actual like destination or an actual platform to land onto, you're going to be leaving a lot of decisions up in the air and open to make a lot more mistakes.
Now the kiddies too, because they're going to be home for spring break and summer break as well too. So, what advice would you give to the parents out there that have the kids as well and they want them to eat healthy and indulge, because they indulge in snacks.
Right.
They're into cookies and things like that. So, what advice would you give to the parents out there and what they can do to make sure that the kids stay active during the summer, not on the video games?
Um, as far as food goes, at least for my house, we cook at home, so we try to help our son get involved with the cooking. So we'll have him cut up the fruit when we're making juices, or even if he's making a meal for himself, we'll let him like build the plate and things like that. So finding ways for them to be more involved in it, they'll start to ask more questions. They'll start to know more and have, I guess you could say, better expectations for their options. Because the reason why a lot of kids are attracted to these snacks and things like that is really because they're convenient and they just taste really, really good. So you kind of can't compete other than just kind of giving them the environment to be around healthier foods and healthier options. But as far as staying active, in my personal life, my son he likes to like get tossed in the air a lot, and so after a good 4 or 5 times, I'm like, all right, I'm tired. But I try to make sure he's a part of my day to day lifestyle because he has so much energy, and I've noticed as they get older, they start to get whittled into school and work and things like that, so they're not as active as they get older. And I found that when they can get more involved into group activities, maybe playing with friends, or try to make the entire family have a group activity that's a little more active. That's a few ways I found other families have gotten their kids into being a little more active around the house.
Yes, because when they're inside, they're either on the video games and they are hooked. So it's important that they get them involved, get them to go outside. Because back in our day, when we were kids, we would go outside and play. We didn't have what is it the kids like to play nowadays? Fortnite and all of these
Right.
games out here nowadays. They're glued to that. So it's just like get up, get active, and do something that can be beneficial to making sure that you stay healthy. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be going on vacation. Like I said, the two pieces are going to come out. What I'm wearing today, I had to make sure that I'm in shape for this outfit that I'm wearing today. If you guys know, you know, you've seen the post. I just posted it. So it's important because a lot of people, even with people who suffer from body conscious, you know, they're very unconscious within their body. It's important that you stay healthy. We're not telling you need to lose weight, but we want you to be healthy so you can live a longer life. Now, now, sometimes I mentioned Beyonce. Dame, you're also an artist as well too.
Yeah.
Today's look is inspired by Beyonce, her "Dangerously in Love" era.
Okay.
So let's talk music for a minute. We're now seeing a lot of black artists in high volume saying, hey, and I wanted to know your thoughts, saying, hey, we had this genre of music. We are now reclaiming it. And I think what she did with this album, Cowboy Carter, was definitely reclaiming for the culture for black artists because almost every black artist out here, we've invented every genre of music from hip hop to blues to rock and roll to soul and country. And we know there's a lot of black country singers. How do you feel about Beyonce shaking the table and saying, okay, it is time for black artists to reclaim the culture of country music and every music genre?
I think what she did, it kind of it solidified what a lot of black country artists have been trying to do. But I think what she was able to do, many black country artists can't do, which is to reinvent the wheel, right? So, what I typically see black artists try to do is to um, assimilate. So, if I'm a black country artist, I want to make country music. But what she did was she took country and made it her own, at least for this album. And that's a way I think a lot of black artists can find their own identity in a lot of the genres that they don't feel represented, because when you try to assimilate you kind of just blend in and we don't really you're not competing, and that's the difference. And so with Beyonce, she's able to compete because A, she has the huge fan base that's going to check it out, but B, she also has the ability to say, okay, this is what country has been, but this is what we're going to do now.
Yes.
And that's something a lot of artists A, aren't willing to do, and they're not willing to risk their career doing that, especially as somebody who's trying to join a genre.
And we've talked about this, and I think in either our first or second interview about artists being put in a box and being labeled. And a lot of people know her for Dangerously in Love. They know her for Lemonade. They know her for so many different music categories. And I feel like what she did was definitely reclaim back the culture of country music because we are the original inventors of it, of blues, rock and roll, soul, jazz, hip hop, of course. All of these genres I think a lot of black country artists, and it would, and now it's like they're coming out in high volume in the woodwork saying, thank you for doing this and recognizing us and showing us that, hey, we are part of it as well, too. And now we're seeing white country artists and saying, okay, they're becoming more welcoming and saying, okay, even though, you know, there is racism in the country music industry, and it was T-Pain who spoke out about it as well, too. He said, I would never do country music because I know that there's racism in this music genre. But we're now seeing a lot of black artists come out and say, hey, we invented this, we're coming back and we're reclaiming it. So I think what she did with this album, Act Two, was dynamic because I've never
A
seen
lot of work
anything
to
like it before. I'm sorry, I was cutting you off. You were saying?
I said she also gave them a lot of work to do as well, because it's one thing to have a light shown on you, but now you got to show and prove. So a lot of these artists, they can't resort to what they have been doing because she's proven that this is what it takes to be noticed. That's a lot of the things that many artists kind of like they fail to miss, even if they're elite level artists and have been in the game for a long time. If this is what it took for you to be recognized, then that means you have to keep the eye strike while the iron's hot. And what you will notice after this album going into like the winter months, you're gonna notice a lot of artists trying to recreate what she did instead of creating a unique experience. But then that'll just leave the cream to rise to the top. You'll start to see really, really elite level musicians come out of it. But something like that always leaves a whole lot more work for the other artists because they have to live up to the expectation of being unique and standing out and competing.
Absolutely. And there's so many artists out here now, country artists that are black. I mean, Mickey Guyton, there's so many that I didn't know. And I think it was the Griot. They posted some of the top 5 black country artists. And we are now seeing them come out in high volume and saying, hey, thank you for recognizing us as well, too.
Right.
Because let's be real, the CMTAs, which is her experience, she kind of touched on that in this project. We know that we wouldn't see people that look like us up there. It's typically the ones who are palm color, and they have the power to run these organizations and things. But for her to shake the table and say, "Hey, y'all didn't welcome me. I didn't have a welcoming experience performing at this award show as the first Black woman to ever do it, but I'm gonna go and do something. I got you. I'm gonna talk about it." Now's the time says that Black country music has always existed. Rosetta Tharpe, the first Black country singer. We just need to take back the power of the music industry. Yes, and a lot of Black artists. Prince was even keen on this as well too. Because now's the time talked about it. Writers credit. Prince was very genius at this. Before he passed away, God rest his soul. He said, "Only your masters." He went out and he defined labels. He didn't, conform to a certain record label. He went and he started his own, New Power Generation. And from there on, he had Shaka Khan on the label. It was so many artists that he had on his own label. So what do you see for independent artists in the future of 24 as it pertains to country music, as it pertains to hip hop music?
There's what I would like to see and then what I expect to see. What I would like to see is a lot more artists to take on the business mindset of the music industry. So to look at a situation like what happened with Beyonce as an opportunity for them to catapult off of, but what I expect to happen is a lot of the artists to expect her to open a door for them. And that's not necessarily how it's going to work because even though country music has been, or Black country music has existed all the time, there was still that fierce competition of every other person of all races that wanted part of it. And when you see, like I said, this shaking up of a genre or an industry, it takes a lot of work and a lot of resources to do that one performance, that one album from that one artist. So now, instead of believing that she has paved the way for you, just believe that there's a way to pave a road for others before yourself. Now, if artists start to take that mindset, you'll start to see a lot more, let's say, Black country artists taking a stance that's not so well, what has country done for me type of mindset. It'll be, okay, well, I want to be in country music as a Black artist. I'm going to go do it. And that's kind of the approach I would like to see more from artists, especially the independent ones. I don't expect it from people who are signed because there's, a greater business agenda there. You work for a corporation that's trying to make certain money and things like that. But if you're an independent Black country artist and you really believe the things you're believing in, then you would have to put everything on the line, just like Beyonce did. She put us on the line. She put the other artists she worked with on the line, all of her fans. If it didn't work, it would have been on her name. So that's the type of risk we have to be expecting to take as artists. But I don't think many are because of how heavy of a risk it can be.
And they're afraid. They're afraid it's just like, hey, and we've seen this happen with so many great artists from Nina Simone to Phyllis Hyman. Now Time says taking credit for the original Black women like Big Mother Bertha. Exactly. Rock and roll and country music is ours, and blues. Blues music
he thinks that he's turned away from country. That's kind of disheartening, but it kind of tells us as fans where his mindset is on his career. He's more, I would say he's more of an independent artist, but you can see that he values what he has versus risking it to pave a way for another artist, which is fine, but it's just something that I know a lot of artists feel the same way as him. They'll see the racism, they'll see the red tape, they'll see the under the table business dealings, and they'll turn away, which then closes doors for somebody to come under as just a musician to play guitar and sing country. Now they got to make sure they're armed to the teeth in business, They're armed to the teeth in relationships and resources, and it's going to make it that much more difficult for them to, like you said, be represented in this genre.
Hootie went through a lot. Yes, absolutely.
Yep, Woody too. They got to. They have to. It's part of the journey, honestly.
He was the only black man in a majority white band, right?
Yep.
And with this new thing that is going on now with diversity, education, and inclusion, I think that should be in the music industry as well too, because black artists should be able to cross over and do whatever music genre they want to do. They don't want to be labeled, and we talked about that in our second conversation about artists being labeled just to one category. You guys know that I'm a big Whitney Houston fan. I love Whitney Houston. What I loved about her, God rest her soul, I hate speaking in past tense about her, but what I loved about her is that she was able to do R&B, give us the greatest love of all, give us Saving All My Love for You, all of these R&B romance songs,
Mm.
and to be able to go do The Preacher's Wife and do gospel as well too, because she started off in the church. The same for Aretha Franklin, the same for Beyonce, the same for any artist. They started off in the church, and for her, she didn't really care about, she had that same problem. And I talked about this with Stephen Boyce as well, too, because he's had that problem of being a black artist
Yeah.
and being put into a box in a category, like having trouble to cross over, shall I say.
Mm-hmm.
Cross over and gain and garner a black audience. And that happens with a lot of black artists who are in the pop R&B arena.
Right.
It's just like, hey, am I losing my black audience? And for Whitney Houston, she had that problem, as well as Stephen Boyce, who I've had, who's an independent artist who I've interviewed on the show on several occasions. He's been here and he's talked about, being a black artist and how difficult it was to be able to cross over to the black and garner the black
Mm-hmm.
audience side. That's difficult for a lot of artists. Anytime you cross over, it's just like, okay, am I black enough? Am I white? And all of these things go into question: is this person black enough? Are they making this? All of these things. It's happened to a lot of
And
artists.
that's why you have to be you have to have thick skin. Like you have to either have thick skin or have so much value that it just you don't have to hear the noise, right? Like Beyonce doing what she's doing, I can't imagine her feeling like if her fans don't love it, she's not gonna make the album. I think there's a strong sense of like purpose and creation that something like racism shouldn't turn you away from creating music. Something like um, they don't enjoy my music because I'm black shouldn't turn you away from doing what you do. And I think that's what a lot of artists tend to lean on and expect some kind of grace for it. But in reality, it's a competition that transcends race. It transcends class, especially when it comes to art. It's going to come down to how you make people feel. So if as a black artist you want to do gospel and you know that you're losing a certain group of people, then you got to accept that. You can't fight for them and then fight for what they don't love and then expect it all to come together. It's really tough to do that.
And it's going to lead them astray. It's going to lead them astray if you switch to a different music genre. K. Michelle is another one. Country music, that you can't talk about country without talking about K. Michelle, because she tried that as well too, and the audience was just kind of like scratching their heads, like, "Huh?
Yep, and
We know
you have
you
to
for
push through.
R&B
Yeah,
soul."
and you still have to push through. And it sucks because I was talking about this yesterday with Shayla. It takes a tangible hit to your career if something doesn't work out, which makes art objective more than subjective when you try to figure out what agenda you want from it. So if you want to have people appreciate your art, then you're going to have to give them what they appreciate. But if you want to be some kind of like unique, love of self, I'm just creating because I want to create, you're going to find more people that can't understand or don't really mess with or don't appreciate it as much as you do. But now you have a choice to make as an artist, which is, do I continue doing this or do I give the people what they want? And that's something you kind of can't you can't live in the middle. You have to pick one. A lot of people that try to live in the middle, they wind up getting phased out over time. Like we just stop listening to their music eventually.
Now, Tom said she wasn't scared of the challenge of the world oppression, and she said that when she got up there and she did her acceptance speech when Stevie Wonder presented her with the award. She said that in her speech that she was faced with so much scrutiny and criticism to people. It's anytime you try to cross over and do something because your audience are so used to one thing. But it's just like whenever you come out with an album, each album is not going to be the same. It's going to be different. Another artist, Janet Jackson.
Yeah.
We know her for being, the sister of Michael and Jackie, all of them, they each have their own niche. But she said, okay, I'm going to give you Control, and then I'm going to give you Rhythm Nation, and then I'm going to give you Velvet Rope. And you see where I'm going. Each album, it wasn't the same. It was a different feel. Even though the Janet album sounds a little bit like the Velvet Rope. Velvet Rope sounds a little like the Janet album. It's different. It's a different feel. It still has that sensuality, that Janet that y'all know. If you know, you know. Y'all seen the vibe cover, but she wanted it to be different. She touched on heavy subjects on the Velvet Rope album. She talked domestic violence. She talked about being in the queer community. She talked about falling in love, sexuality, all of these things that were taboo at that time to talk about. She
Right.
talked about it on the album, whereas the Janet album, it was more sensuality. Janet becoming into her womanhood and saying, hey, yeah, I'm Michael's sister, but I'm a woman now, and I can do what I please with my sexuality. I can embrace my femininity. I can embrace romance, all of these different emotions in that album. So for every album that she's done, it wasn't the same. It
Right.
was
And
different.
then your fans along with you for the ride. So like as you grow and you change, they'll grow and change with you. Even though they did see you as Michael Jackson's little sister,
Right.
they seen you go from that to having your own identity. And the people who hated on you, they watched you fight through that and maintain your identity, and they respect it more.
And that's the thing with black artists. You just like, okay, everybody has their niche. Aretha has her niche. Michael has his niche.
Hmm.
Usher has his niche. Uh, Dame is a fan of Tech Nine. I like Beyonce. I'm a big Beyonce fan, and you guys know it. But every artist has their own identity. So yes, we can make our comparisons. Is Rihanna better than Beyonce? That's been a whole debate for years over the thing. And my thing is this: each artist has their own technique of when they sing. Like I'm gonna go to gospel. Yolanda Adams.
Hmm.
To me, her and CC kind of mirror each other because they do certain things with their vocal ability. A lot of belts, a lot of growls, especially Yolanda. Whitney Houston even did it as well too. So every artist has their technique for when they sing. There are some that do a lot of riffs, a lot of runs. So as far as singing, vocal ability, stage presence, that's what makes a great artist and sets them aside from each other.
Right.
And as far as their style, their styling, everybody has their own style. So as it pertains to putting out the album release, how they do it, marketing, their teams are amazing. Listening to the full albums in your bedroom for the first time after going to the store to get it, I miss those days because Walmart used to have the machine where you can literally scan the album and you could put on the
Yeah.
headphones and listen to each track. I remember those things too. And then you could, if you flip through the magazines, also you would be able to go and you could purchase cassettes or a CD for a what 5 for 1 penny. I mean, it
Yeah.
was those little things that you could do back in the day. But we're now in the day and age of streaming. How many streams can you
Hmm.
get? Another thing also, um, how much is it going to chart on the top of the charts for Billboard and what's the other one? Hot 100, yeah, Billboard Hot 100, and there's so many other platforms out here that you stream and you listen to the artists. Because I know Billboard, they drop that list every time I scroll down and I see the list of okay, who's number four, who's number six, who's number one. So that's how different music has definitely changed throughout the years. Whereas versus the '90s, you had your cassettes, you had your Walkmans, you had all of these things. Now it's about streams and how many streams and purchasing the single
You
itself.
honestly experience the artist before you even experience the artist. Like there, you had to like my first experience for DMX. Somebody gave me a cassette, and it was a promotional cassette with just 2 songs. That was enough, but I wouldn't have known what those letters meant. I wouldn't have known that he was a rapper. I wouldn't have known anything unless I heard the music. But now you'll see an image of Cardi B at a fashion show in another country before you even know that she makes music. So it's like artists today are like they're more so brands with a person behind it that's being marketed as if it's a whole, brand in itself, but it's really just a person that's marketing themselves. It's interesting how you got to like transition to that today as an artist, but it's a curse and a bless at the same time. Like it's good that it makes it easier for people to see you and want to connect with you, but it's also more difficult because they're not connecting with you for music. They're connecting with you because they like how you look, or you dress nice, or you were in a certain place, or you were on a certain song with someone else, and things like that. It's a lot more complex.
And I love what you just said because it is a gimmick. In a way, it's a gimmick. When this project was announced, the Grammys was out. The Grammys was out, and if you look at what she wore at the Grammys, I'm like, okay, pay attention to certain things. I pay attention to everything, every detail. So if you paid attention to what she wore to the Grammys, I said, oh, the hair color changed, the fashion changed. She's cooking something.
Right.
And then it was announced that day of the Grammys, the commercial came out, the Verizon commercial came out.
Yep.
She gave us a teaser about her hair care product line, which is doing well. And then she gave us, okay, this is going to be coming out March 29th, Act 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's going to be an Act 3 too, which I think is rock and roll. So it's going to be interesting to see how she does it. Whereas the first one, it was like dance, electronica, R&B, pop.
Mm-hmm.
The second one now is like country with a little bit of hip hop. So I love how she did it. She said, this is not a Beyonce, this is not a country album, this is a Beyonce album.
And that's how it's
So,
supposed to be. Right. Exactly.
absolutely.
Exactly.
And now's the time since I'm a stand on spending more individual singles, multi versions. Now, I'll take you even further back in my father even has his records, and the first record that I ever seen, and I don't ever bother his records, was Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes,
Mm.
and the record player. I see it right there, and I'm going through. It's what's the group? Third Degree. So that's yeah. That's how I'm gonna let y'all know what type of music he brought me up into as I got into my phase of Anita Baker, and Sade, and who else was out at the time? Jody Watley and Johnny Gill and all these other artists. So that's how my music taste buds was expanded just from listening through those records right
Yeah.
there. So that's how far we've come from. And I mean, they still, even to this day, they take the records of the artists that are currently out now. Beyonce has Renaissance. You can go and get the vinyl for
Yep.
that. So there are people out here who are collecting the vinyls.
Yep.
They don't make 8-track players anymore. So a lot has definitely changed in the year 2024 as it pertains to music. And now it's about streams. It's about how many streams or downloads or uploads or views is on the video. I know when you've mentioned Cardi, when she dropped her freestyle, people ran right over to YouTube. They've seen a clip. So it's genius how these artists are able to market themselves. If they put just something out there, they can put, I know for, let's see, for Megan Thee Stallion, she posted a picture of a snake. We already knew what it was alluded to. She's coming out with something.
Right.
And she is coming out with an album. She's going on tour this summer with Glorilla. And that right there lets people know, hey, she's coming out on with a album. She's coming out with something.
Right.
So these artists are genius with how they promote themselves and put it out there. If Lil Wayne today was to drop something, put a 3 up and say the Carter 3, which is I think already out, if I'm not mistaken. If he was to come out with another Carter, I mean, each artist has their way of putting something out there to let you know, hey, I'm going on tour,
Mm-hmm.
or I got an album coming out. And I think for this album, Cowboy Carter, the whole strategy from her with the horse to the braided look with the beauty pageant thing. I mean, it was amazing how she came out with it.
Right.
It's all about imagery, and that's what draws to people's eyes to make them say, "Oh, I got to go and listen to this album. I want to go and listen to this track." So it's eye
That's
catching. It's all
how
about what needs to be
to be unique with their artistry, because like you said, it's not a country album, it's a Beyonce album. And what I hope a lot of artists catch from that is that you don't need to make country music, you just need to be a country artist.
right.
Use the tool you have, which is your experiences, maybe living in the South or being from that area, and the instruments you play, the clothes you wear, make typically do is try to create what has happened in the past, and they'll try to just say, "I'm going to make country music," but that's not going to give you the. I guess what people are asking for is the respect of a Beyonce, which is
Yeah.
carving your own lane. That's something a lot of artists haven't grasped yet.
And carving your own path. Don't try to be like anybody else. Like I know when Ariana Grande came out, there was a lot of comparisons to her and Mariah, but they both do the thing with the high notes. But it's just like each artist has their own identity. They're two different singers. You know, country is not just in the southern part of America. It's all over the world, and people all over are listening. They're listening. So it's amazing how music is able to cross over to different parts of the country, United States
Country,
overall.
there's a lot of different ones. Yeah, there's a bunch of them.
Even for what's the genre? K-pop. We're seeing that. I mean, it's in the United States. People listen to it. So wherever you go, whatever the album drops or the projects drop, is going to hit all over the world, and people are going to be listening. Eyes are going to be watching to see the next video because visual is a thing. Now you've got the album, but if people are like, okay, when are we going to get visuals? And that's what I love about her is that she gives you a visual. When the first Renaissance came out, people were like, are we getting visuals with it? She gave us a teaser. She gave us all of these things.
Hmm.
And that's for any artist. And I've seen 21 Savage do it. I've seen Glorilla do it. Just give us a teaser of something that they're coming out with. So you got to have a great marketing team, a great PR team. But if you're doing it independently, yeah, you're gonna have to
Yeah,
you're gonna
that
have to spend
creative.
some money.
You
Yeah.
see artists doing stuff that has nothing to do with music. You'll start seeing artists doing skits. You start seeing sponsorships. It's just they're either scrambling to try to make some kind of notoriety instead of focusing on music, or they'll focus on music so much that they're bad at business. And I think finding that sweet spot is in just um, like you said, when you have your album and your visuals and you have everything in order, it's almost seamless. Like you can just drop it and see what happens. But when you're like, oh, I want to make sure they like this and make sure I fit in this genre, or will black people respect me? And it's like you're muddling up everything you're supposed to be doing, which is just to create, just to keep it simple.
Bro dropped his collab with Louis Vuitton Western and that Tyler the Creator, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So every artist has their way of getting the message out there, whatever it is,
Yeah.
of promoting their album. Whereas back in the day, they were promoted on television. Y'all notice that they don't do album commercials anymore.
No,
It's
they
just
don't.
like when an album when an album comes out, an artist will post it. We are now in a day and age of IG and X
Mm-hmm.
and Facebook. So we're now in that day and age where an artist can easily post something and we will be drawn to it. It's got to be, it's full of color, it's full of all of these different things. So, oh, Pharrell, yes, genius. He is another genius too. I love how he doesn't let music labels define him. He goes to
He's
hip
all.
hop, he goes to pop. He's able to cross over.
Yeah. It's because he's understood his toolkit. His toolkit is his ability to make music. He's not like when I first was introduced, he was on the Clips album. So I thought he was just a producer for hip hop. But when he started playing the piano and singing and then making his own music, okay, he's just able to create, and he's just putting himself wherever is beneficial. He's not trying to box himself in.
And we're seeing a lot of what I love to see also is a lot of artists play live instruments. Like we've seen Lizzo on the flute. We've seen, of course, Alicia Keys on the piano.
Yeah.
Um, Angie Winans, the gospel singer, is the sister of CeCe Winans. I've watched a performance of her, and she actually said, "Okay, I want to play the piano in this song," and she did. She played the piano in this song. So I mean, artists playing live in real time and incorporating live instruments into their performances. I would love to see more of that as well, too, or just a live band overall,
Mhm.
versus having the backup track playing. So
Right. I don't know why that is. I've noticed it probably alongside you when there were just less and less instruments coming out on stage. But I don't know why that is, but my assumption is that a lot of the people that we are calling artists aren't true artists. Like they're pieces of what should be an artist. Like You can rap, but you don't know what beats are. You can make beats, but you can't read music. You can play an instrument, but you don't have stage presence. Like there's pieces and Frankensteins of artists today that are successful, and we can't really identify who's has a specialization, I guess, in certain parts of music.
And what's so crazy is we're now in a day and age where they can easily go in the studio and they can mix something up.
Yep.
Back in the day, you could do that too. That it would be scratching. You know, if you had a house party, they would scratch on the records. That's an art. That's a form of music as well too. A lot of people don't believe that. So everybody has their niche. I mean, you can go out there and bang on the trash can, make sounds. It's certain things you would hear. Pharrell, and I think that's something that I heard. I'm glad you mentioned him now, sometime. He said he would hear certain sounds, he would hear certain things, and it'd be like, okay, it would come to him. Timbaland is another one as well too. They would hear sounds and they pick it up and say, okay, I gotta go to the studio and make this beat.
Yep.
And Dame, you specialize in beats, you beat make as well too, so you can attest to that. But I love how artists nowadays are able to. Tiana Taylor is another one. I just thought about it. We've seen her hands on in the studio, and she would be hands on creating, writing throughout the whole process of creating her album. And she's another one. When she goes on stage and she performs, she'll have a band sometimes as well too. Yes, Chicago is popular for bucket boys, and
Okay.
even for scratching. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I see DJs performing live too with that.
Yep. I was listening to I can't remember his name. He's a DJ. He's super popular on the internet. He basically got all the artists together and they did basically a Zoom call performance of all their classic hits. But that is DJing today. What I'm used to is scratching, where like there's a DJ and an MC, and then he's making like instrumental beats and things like that come together from other songs. That's a lost art. It's rare you will see a DJ doing that today. Super rare. Now you'll see pretty much playlists. You'll see live or interactive playlists instead of actual, I guess you can say, instrumentation of a DJ and things like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
It's a lot more different.
A completely different dynamic, a completely different generation that is listening to hip hop and R&B or country
Mm-hmm.
or jazz or soul. A lot of these artists nowadays are infusing all of this into whatever music that they put out. And music back then had a certain feel, especially in the 90s. It had a certain feel. And we see a lot of artists nowadays like Lucky Day or Coco Jones and so many others try to give us that nostalgia, that feel in their music
Yeah.
nowadays. Tiana Taylor is another one as well too, and it's just like, wow, this makes me think about the '90s because you had Erica, you had the Roots, you had Mary. All of them were out during that time. Janet as well too. All of them were out. But now we're starting to get that feeling. People are wanting that feeling, that old school feeling of the 90s, the hip hop, and how they infuse hip hop and jazz together. And A Tribe Called Quest was the first one that I think would be able to do that, to infuse jazz and incorporate jazz as well as in hip hop as well. Too. So many artists are able to do it.
I think a lot of it is going to take is going to take a lot of appreciation for, like you saying, instrumentation, because I'm hearing new artists do the same thing. They're taking their rap records and they're going to like 60s and 70s funk music or even
Mm-hmm.
jazz music, and they're sampling it, but they're putting it to like 2024 lyrics. And what I've seen from listening to it for, I think, about the past 2 years now is that people don't know the samples, and when they look it up, they're thinking the samples were a lot younger than they really are. They're thinking these songs came from the 80s and 90s, but they're from the late 60s.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it creates a wonder for a lot of the fans, but many of the fans, they just don't have the appreciation to know that, okay, this is good music. This is what you should be sampling. They're just kind of like you. We kind of have to spoon feed a lot of the fans what is pushing the needle and things like that. Like Beyonce, like she had to basically do all of this for us to go, okay, yeah, there it is. There's the black country artist. Now we see him, you know. So a part of that is going to be a lot of the fans having some kind of appreciation for the instrumentation. Like more people that play instruments, seeing people play, having more artists come on stage with instruments. I think if we start doing that more, people can really identify it better.
Now's the time, says James Brown goes a long way in understanding, and we can be original and still create great music. You've mentioned Rick James and James Brown, and another one is Jimi Hendrix. I
Yeah, being
think,
able to take genres and just completely revamp them completely.
and I think Lenny Kravitz is another one. My bad, I forgot about him because he plays instruments as well too. He plays guitar, and I've seen this man play guitar. So it's just like the feeling is there. Where a lot of you, I appreciated her having Stevie Wonder play harmonica on Jolene. Oh yeah, and Stevie Wonder has played instruments throughout his career as well too. So to see artists in real time play
Yeah,
instruments and say, "Hey, I want to play piano. I want to play the keyboard. I want to do this for my album," and mix and orchestrate in the studio is completely different.
no,
Another artist, and I feel like she's. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm cutting
oh
you
no,
off.
I was just saying, I just don't know what made artists stop doing that. Like, we've never seen Jay-Z play an instrument. We've never seen Nas pick up a trumpet, but I do know Nas's father plays trumpet.
Mhm.
So it's like it's in their culture, it's in their household. I just don't know what's making artists put down instruments and not bring them on the stage.
And another artist who I feel she does not get her just due. Her name is Raquel Farrell. You guys remember Raquel Farrell? And she would play the piano. She would sit and she'd have her microphone. Oleta Adams is another one. And these are underrated artists. They play the instruments right there live on stage. And that would be just giving a concert overall that entire long time.
Yep.
So nowadays you got artists playing the backup track and it's an instrumental. So they sang over it. To hear them sing live in real time and sound just like the album is incredible. And I think SZA does that very well. She does it very well. I definitely feel that Nas appreciates music and the effects that it can play on people more than Jay Z. Mm.
Nas did an album that was a live rendition of his album. I think it's Illmatic, and he did it performed at the Kennedy Center live with an orchestra. He had his father play trumpet for it too. That kind of solidified for me as a fan that he was an artist the whole time, but it kind of showed me that he's doing things that many artists aren't even willing to do. I think the only other group I've seen do this was maybe the Migos, where they had an orchestra with a video with them.
Oh
But
yeah.
if things like that started happening more and more, then you will see appreciation from people who are like maybe like if I'm a 22-year-old college student and I play violin, but I listen to hip hop, this would allow me an opportunity. But if I never see it, I'm gonna think, oh, I'm only supposed to play classical music, or that's where you get the box that artists put themselves in. You got to really expose yourself to a lot of things, and I think it's up to artists to expose people to new things instead of trying to be the thing that they expect all the time.
That's what pushed hip hop forward, like what Metro Boomin recently did. Right, I agree. And a lot of hip hop artists are starting to incorporate some infused blends of jazz and R&B
Yep.
nowadays in this day and age. Back then they were doing it as well too, as I mentioned, a tribe called Quest, and so many other artists were doing that. But now we're seeing the next generation of artists that are coming out get out here and say, okay, I want to infuse this into my single as well too, and give people that feeling that classical. Yes, I've seen hip hop artists even incorporate, as Dane mentioned, orchestras, violins, all of these things into their music. And it's amazing how they're able to get up and infuse the two, hip hop and then classical, or hip hop and jazz, or hip hop and R&B or soul, and give people exactly what's intended to get. And I think that is genius. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the music industry shifts this year in
Right.
24. I mean, we've seen it when the pandemic first hit. It's just like, okay, everything was shut down. 2020, everything was shut down. And a lot of artists had to be creative. They were penning, they were writing. They're just like, I want to go on tour. I'm ready to tour. I'm ready to shoot videos. But we couldn't at that time. A lot of artists couldn't at that time because we were all stuck inside and in the era of the verses. People want things like that.
Right.
They want that nostalgia, that feeling. But I don't think you will ever be able to replace the 90s or the 80s or the 70s or the 60s, these great eras of music. Now you just have to go and create your own lane. And
Yep.
that's for any new artist that is coming into the game. Create your own lane. So you have your identity, that artist has their identity, and you have your identity. Even for me, as this host of this platform, I used to do it all the time. I'd be like, damn, I wish I could be like that other host of another part for another platform. And my Island Yankee paternal, he tells me this. He says, stop comparing yourself to other artists. That's the thing right there. And I would beat myself up so bad about it. I would compare myself to other hosts of other platforms. But I'm just like, and then one of my guests asked me this question as it pertains to individuality. What sets you aside from other hosts, other talk show hosts, or other hosts of their platforms, influencers, and whoever? I said my personality is what sets me aside. Of course, the ever-changing looks, because everybody has their own look. I wouldn't be like any other influencer. I'd rather have my own identity. So when you're coming into this business, whatever you're doing, whether it's hosting a platform, whether it is doing music, find your own identity and find your lane of what works for you so that you don't be compared to the next person. I mean, it's good to be, it's, flattery. It's good to be compared to someone, but it's just like, hey, I have my own identity. I have my own identity. I'm my own person. I have siblings and me and my brother, we look just like, I get it all the time. I look exactly like my mom, but it's just like, can I have my own identity, please? So self-production is like Tiana Taylor did Spike Lee. Create
Yeah.
your own lane, create your own genre.
And do you see
I take it even further.
how much of a risk it takes for them too? A lot of, like I said, a lot of artists aren't willing to take that self-production risk. They're waiting to get signed, or they're waiting for the right producer to give them a hit, or to get that one feature. If it never comes, then you never did it. So it's like, if Spike Lee waited for Hollywood to give him a deal, we would have never got Spike Lee. You got to take that first step and stay on it. It's tough.
And it's scary taking risks
Yep.
as it pertains to music or what's going to be the next chapter, what's going to be the next album, what's going to be the next single, and how people are going to receive it because people can receive it like,
They could
I
turn and
don't
burn on.
know about this.
Yeah.
It's got to have. It's all about the sound. When I listen to music, I listen to what goes on in the background, what's going on in the background as well too. If it's an orchestra, is it a piano, is it a drum? These are things that I listen to. Yes, I listen to the song fully, but I also pay attention to the background. You never know. You could recognize somebody that's one of your favorite singers singing for that artist or that has pinned on that artist. Whereas now, as now as I mentioned previously, you could easily go in the store and pick up an album and you open it up and you see the credits for the artist, who penned what, who did this, who did instruments on this, and it breaks it down. The first album that I purchased would have to be TLC's Fan Mail.
Mm.
And then the second one that I purchased would have to be The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. And they both came out in the same time. So if you go back, you open the album jacket. I miss those days where you open the album jacket and it will tell you, okay, who penned this and who penned that. The third album that I purchased, and I remember it in category and order, would have to be the Mary J. Blige My Life album. And that album is so groundbreaking because everything that the music also has to be able to relate to people and
Right.
resonate with people.
Right.
Fourth
Yep.
album for me was Brandy Never Say Never. So I remember these little things. Now's the time to say Crazy Sexy Cool. That was later. That was years later because I remember it was a certain point in time at my age where I couldn't listen to certain music. Our parents didn't want us listening to what's his name, Lenny Williams or Millie Jackson or either of these artists. Yeah, if you know, you know. My mama would get because growing up in a devout Christian household, I couldn't sing certain things. But listen, as I've gotten older, I could go back and I could listen to certain music and get a feel for each artist. So the first album that really introduced me to hip hop was Lil Kim's Hardcore. And I asked my sister to send it to me. She's in New York and she has a lot of albums. And I said, send me that one. But she said, oh my God, you can't listen to that. I said, why not? She said it's got the parental advisory sticker on it. So she sent me Destiny's Child Writings on the Wall. And y'all know that Orange album.
Yeah.
That album, that was their sophomore album. That solidified them as songwriters. And I think Kelly Rowland, she said that in her interview. So it's amazing how artists are able to play the instruments, write music on their albums, and to be able to not Beyonce, not only that, it was groundbreaking for her to be this because at a time when women wasn't really producing, it was men doing all the producing. I mean, you had Babyface, you had L.A. Reid, you had Jermaine Dupri, of course, Timbaland, so many at that time. But women producing, you really didn't hear about it until Missy stepped on the scene, until Lauryn Hill, she also produced, and then Beyonce wrote as well too. So we're seeing the shift in the music industry where artists are now saying, "Hey, yeah, I got a ghostwriter, I got this, I got da 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 da, but I want to write also too." So a lot of these artists, these rappers out here are penning their singles as well too. That was definitely during the time when the majority of pop songs were being written by Sweden writers. Yes, what's his name? He did Whitney Houston. Soul Shark and Carlin, I think is his name, and he did Heartbreak Hotel for Whitney Houston. So a lot of these producers that are producing American music are coming from overseas. That is a point now,
Yeah,
and they're not really American producers because I mean, you would know if it's a Babyface single, you would know if it's a Timbaland single because each producer has their signature sound, and you would know it right then and there.
yeah. And you see how like
So
we appreciate the producer because we see them working, we see them putting out
yeah.
content. I think it's the same with like instruments. Like if we see more people playing, like her, seeing her play guitar, should have inspired
Oh,
to pick up the guitar. I would assume so. You know, she does it so good.
I mean, she's another one who plays live instrument. That's what I would like to see is artists play live instrument. Yes, I'm here for you singing and singing the instrument. You got the instrumental backup track playing, or you got the DJ back there mixing. But I would love to see more artists get up and actually play instruments on stage along with their music.
It just enhances everything. Just like Anderson Paak, he'll go from
Oh
singing a
yeah.
song and then up on the drum set and still sing the song while playing the drums. It's crazy. So yeah, I think that kind of thing needs to happen more, where people are just being exposed to instruments, like all of music, like the writing, the producing, the singing, everything.
And just be included because at that time, I mean, you really didn't have a whole lot of women
Yeah,
writers. I can't stress that enough because at the time, men were writing and behind the scenes producing, directing. Yes, women had some input, but women were writing and also putting out their singles now. Times have changed since the 90s. We are now in 2024, and a lot of artists are saying, hey, let me give my input to, let me produce. And to see them in the studio producing for other artists is great. Like I seen Mary J. Blige, she was producing for who was it? It was from Boys to Men. His son has a group, and she mixed up a single for them as well too. So she's been doing it.
yeah,
Usher, of course, has had some input into doing his music, and Tank, of course, Tank has written and produced for other artists as well. So it's amazing when they work together and they're putting their input creative.
yeah.
Anderson Paak, Bruno Mars, Bootsy Collins, absolutely. And they play their instruments. And
I,
I've seen Bruno do a cappella. I'm sorry, I was cutting you off again. I keep cutting you off,
I
Lord.
know. I'm agreeing with you. Honestly, I was just like they're powerhouses of artists.
And it's so dynamic how far we've come from cassettes and the A track. Y'all remember the A track? And you got the cassette player, you got the Walkman. We've come from those days, the CD player, with the headphones. We've come so far. And I still, yes, I still have my CD player. And I still have my CDs as well too. I'm looking at a stack of them now. And from what I'm seeing, I see TLC fan mail on the top and I see Ashante Moore at the bottom. So I know directly. I have it all lined up in alphabetical order. And my brother, when I went to New York to visit him, his whole entire room, I was just like,
Yeah, it's crazy.
oh my God. He had albums from here to here. I got exposed to so many from Lionel Richie to Diana Ross to Luther Vandross to he had everybody from TLC, Escape. He had Usher. He had Gerald Levert. He had Phyllis Hyman. People that I would, and I was 8 years old at the time, so I didn't know what half the things that they were saying in their song. But as I've gotten older in my teen years, and I've listened thoroughly to the music, I get a better understanding.
Right.
So I was just watching the music videos like everybody else on television, dancing along, not knowing what the artist is singing about. But now that you understand it in context, it's way better because at that age I couldn't sing some of the stuff that Lil Kim was saying in her hardcore album. My mom, yeah, I wouldn't be here today. if I was singing some of the stuff that she was singing along with her. But yes, Diana Ross. I got my father exposed me to her. He exposed me to Sade, Anita Baker, Barry White, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. And then he just let me take a rift of my own in finding these different artists like Tony Braxton, Janet Jackson, Usher, Johnny Gill, New Edition, all of them, TLC, SW, all of them later on down the line let me take my own taste into what type of music I like. So that's dynamic. And yes, she did just celebrate an 80th birthday. So happy birthday to the queen, the boss, Miss Ross. And if you guys have seen me take photos for the outfit of the day, you see I have two Diana Ross photos right on top of each other. So pay attention to that in the background. But it's all about the music and having a better understanding with the audience as well too. So before we close out, Dane, what are some gems and nuggets that you would like to give? Because I love talking music with you. It's like we both mirror each other
Yeah.
as far as understanding what artists are trying to do with their artistry and being independent and managing yourself. What are some gems and nuggets that you would give? And my colleague, now's the time I've known for a very long time. He's worked in radio. I've worked in radio. So we have a better understanding of what these artists are trying to do. What are some gems that you would give to the next generation of up and coming R&B and hip hop artists and now country artists?
Um, to keep it kind of in theme, I would say you're going to meet resistance. It's a fact. Like when I was in college learning about music, time management was the resistance. I'm in the fitness now, but back then fitness was a part of my resistance. Um, Being a hip hop artist, you won't be appreciated for it until you're talented at it. So when you're thinking like, oh, I'm gonna make beats or I'm gonna rap or I'm gonna make, videos and things like that, you got to get your reps in before you start to actually see recognition. So I was making beats as a single digit age child, but it wasn't until I started to see like the whole picture of making a beat, writing your lyrics, playing the instruments, recording it, publishing it, getting the artwork, and then putting it all together and then putting it out. And for people to still not appreciate it and then continue, that's when you finally have solidified yourself as, okay, this is what I want to do. And then that's something I want young artists to understand, that you have to go through the resistance. They expect it to be easy because you'll see like a Lotto on stage and she's having fun and enjoying it. But personally, I've watched her come from the Jermaine Dupri show in the beginning, and you see the
Yeah.
feelings that she had to go through to finally get the recognition of being called a Lotto. And that's something that's not really laid out for a lot of young musicians, especially if you're an instrumentalist. Like we just talked about having instrumentalists being a little
Yeah.
bit underappreciated on stage. And that's part of the resistance. You're going to be playing the cello, you're going to be playing the flute or the harp, and we're not going to hear you until you get your reps in. You're going to have to go play in certain schools. You're going to have to get denied certain gigs. You're going to have to find creative ways to fit your instrument into other people's genres of music that you're not comfortable with. Like I'm learning guitar, but I'm not learning jazz on guitar like I expected. I'm learning Latin jazz, and it's a learning curve. Like I got to learn the language. I got to learn the culture of how their music is laid. And if I were to look at that resistance of any form, and it would turn me off from music, I would lose everything. I wouldn't have a career. I wouldn't have art. I wouldn't have a name or any of that. So if you're a young artist out there and you want to get started or you've already started, just know you have to be prepared for resistance. It's going to be there. That's why we have a Beyonce.
And there's nothing wrong with it. And that ties into today's final thought, Dame. So I'm glad you said something about resistance. Today's final thought comes from Ruby D, and she says, God, make me so uncomfortable that I will do the very thing that I fear. And as it pertains to artists coming into their artistry and putting out a new album, it can be scary because you don't know
Right.
whether the audience is going to accept it or not accept it. And then you're going to have criticism. You're going to be hit with so many different things. But the key trick is to, yes, it's going to be scary. Don't let it scare you. You're doing this because this is what you love. There's going to be artists who put out new music every day or put out a new show or put out something and it doesn't do so well. But sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board. And I've seen artists put out singles and the singles not chart or do well or success or have successful. It's either a win, it's a win lose situation, sort of like catch 22. Sometimes you win, sometimes you
Everything's
lose.
A
But
lesson.
if you go ahead, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Everything's a lesson. If you put out an album and it failed, find out why. That's that's the only way you can look at it. If you think of everything as a loss, it's not really gonna help you, you know,
And there are so many artists who've had albums shelved that's never gotten released.
ever.
There's artists out here who are no longer with us. Like Prince is one of my favorites. Prince and Aaliyah, y'all think that they got some music hidden somewhere? Yes, again, because they sure do. And it's in the vault. It's locked, sealed away. You are not getting to it
Yep.
because these artists were just like, okay, let me go ahead and pin this. Let me do this. Let me produce this. Before they passed away, I can guarantee you they've got music in the vault. So prepare yourself. And then if the estate chooses to release it and put it out, and people go, it's how people are going to receive it. That's just like with Tupac. A lot of people have mixed emotions about the Tupac, and I'm pretty sure you've seen it, Dane. The Tupac hologram,
Oh
like this man is no longer here. It's like,
yeah, he's not in control of that situation. So that's why it's you got to be a Beyonce. You got to have all the control if you want to be a Beyonce. You got to actually be Beyonce. Like even if you look at like rapper beefs, like that's I've seen local rappers have like problems at shows, but it doesn't stop them. It can't. You have to keep going. There's no way that you can allow anything, politics, money, health. You're literally sacrificing everything to be an artist, and it's gonna come with every bit of resistance you can ever muster up. Even if you have a great career, at the very end you could have problems, like an MC Hammer. It can go bad at any time. You got to be prepared.
and we've seen how the MC Hammer situation play out. I've even seen it with who else? Who's another artist as well? To Phyllis Hyman, we've seen her downfall. Jimi Hendrix is another one. We've lost, and I was talking with someone just the other day because you guys know Lou Gossett Jr., the actor. He passed away. He's no longer with us. Um, they were saying, man, we're losing so many of our icons. We lost Michael. We lost Aretha. We lost Tina Marie. We lost Left Eye. We lost Easy E, and Notorious B.I.G. and Nate Dogg. We lost so many of hip hop's giants. It's just like, who's here now left the next generation to continue on in the music industry? And I'm seeing that with all of these new up and coming artists that you mentioned, Lotto, and so many others. And after a Lotto, it's going to be somebody else come for it. And I mean, even underground rappers that are not even recognized, that are now coming up and stepping up on the scene and saying, hey, I'm here too. I do this as well too. Not in hologram. It's just the obsession to be able to capitalize off of people's likeness and fans' love for artists. And they did it with Whitney Houston as well, too, a hologram as well. Yeah, Whitney and Nipsey Hussle is another one as well, too. So we're seeing how people are able to capitalize off of these artists, and these artists are no longer here. Now you're gonna have to go through the estate. But Prince was smart. Prince was smart, and I give him that because he had his stuff sealed in the vault,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody even knows about it. The same for Aaliyah. The same for Michael. That when Michael's last album, I think it was Escape, and all of these hit singles just start coming out. So you got to be smart as it pertains to planning your music layout. And even for the album to come out, again, you're going to have mixed reactions from people. Some people are going to love it, some people are not going to love it. But it's either way. So be prepared for the resistance, as Dane said. Sorry, just did some bad business with the Michael Jackson estate.
So
Yeah,
yeah, and yeah, it sucks, but it is like you got to look at being an artist as like being a soldier with no country. That's how you got to look at it. Like you got to fight to the T with all your armor, every bullet loaded, attentive and everything, and everybody's an enemy. Like it's weird, yeah, because you can have an estate, but then you got to have your state of train to protect you. You got to have your I's dotted and T's crossed, and a lot of artists they're not willing to do it on their own accord. It's like a business owner. Like you want to have the biggest business, but don't want to work fries, don't want to clean the toilets. So you got to do it all to make sure it's all on point.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, to the new up and coming artists out here, as Dane said, be prepared for this resistance. Fight back. You're going to have criticism. You're going to experience racism, but keep going. I mean, Beyonce is the prime example. She didn't let, she had that experience at the CMT Awards. And she took that and she said, you know what? I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them who are the real true faces of country music. And that she did. I love when she's proved people wrong. So that's what you can say what you want to say about Queen Bee, but she has always been the one to prove people wrong. And there's so many artists out here that have that mentality and that mindset. And that's what you need to adapt to in this business. Prove people wrong when they say, oh, well, she ain't going to come out with nothing, or he's not going to come out with anything. Or what you got? Country?
Right.
You don't know. And Gloria Gaynor, I Will Survive. She disco. They call her the queen of disco music. She came out with a gospel album. And it was just like her label, when she went to talk to her label, it was just like, gospel. You want to do gospel? We know you for I Will Survive. Disco 70 era, because in that era it was Studio
Mm.
54. It was Diana Ross, Sylvester, Liza Minnelli, all of these artists. Um, Michael Jackson. Uh, she said, I'm gonna put out a gospel album. She put out that gospel album and she got a Grammy for it. So it
Yep.
just goes to show you, people are listening, they're paying attention. So
Yep.
never doubt yourself also too. That'd be some advice also.
Yep. I agree. 100%.
All right, fashion dolls, and that concludes today's conversation with Dame Damien. Always a pleasure to catch up with you. Again, your wife is coming back on the show. We're gonna cut up because the last time we did, we talked all things beauty, and she's coming back. So for you, we got to have you back on. It's always a pleasure
Definitely.
having you here. And where can everyone follow you and stay in touch with you on staying fit for the summer and the spring, as far as cooking healthy recipes as well?
As far as cooking and fitness, I've tried to focus that on Instagram and Facebook because those are connected. So if you want to just, see what I'm cooking or have a conversation about different foods or just learn something and pick my brain, Instagram and Facebook. And if you want to learn more about my music, you can either search me on your favorite streaming site or find me on YouTube specifically for the music.
All right, fashion dolls. We are back tomorrow, closing out this week. We had a girl talk scheduled for yesterday, but IG was down and Facebook and WhatsApp was down. So we are going to do the girl talk tomorrow, and Chappelle Nichols joins me in the dollhouse. It's been a minute since I've done a girl talk, but she's going to be joining me tomorrow. So make sure you guys tune in tomorrow at 4. And the lineup for next week will also go out tomorrow as well, too. So you can check out this interview here on IGTV exclusively. It will be up. And you can head on over and subscribe to my channel as well as Dame's channel. Check out his channel as well too. He does his mixing on there. You guys can check him out in action. He does cooking healthy recipes so you guys can stay fit and healthy for the summer. That is key and important. Health is wealth, and now's the time to put that in the comments earlier. I think he put
Yep.
it in the comments. Great health is great wealth. So make sure that you guys are staying healthy as well too. I love you all, and I will see you tomorrow, Fashion Dolls.
Peace.
TGIF is Friday. And Dame, always a pleasure having you here.
This was fun. I like doing these. These are super fun. I don't really do interviews.
Yes,
I think my first one was WPFW down in DC. That was the first one I ever did. But this is fun. I like doing these.
and I gotta have you back. Gotta have you back on.
Definitely.
All right, Fashion Dolls, you guys take care, and we will see you tomorrow. Talk to y'all later.
Bye.